Tomorrow is when I start orientation for the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship, so I am headed to the airport now. I'm getting in a day early. Hopefully I'll get to do a little bit of sightseeing in Washington, D.C. while I'm there, but I'm just really excited to meet all of the other fellows and learn a lot more about science writing and get really good at it this summer. So follow along on my journey to Washington, D.C. I just got to my hotel room, so I wanted to do a quick room tour before I head out and find dinner. This is what it looks like when you first come in. There is a bathroom just to the left with toilet and shower. And then you come around and there is the sink, lots of coffee cups and cute little art. Coming back out through the bathroom, we have the closet with some hangers, iron, and the safe down there. Then there's just one queen size full bed. I think it's a full bed, just one. And a nice big desk. TV right across from the bed. Window, and there's a door out to a balcony with some chairs. The chairs on the table. No smoking sign because I don't want smoking. And then there's one little chair in here that I forgot to mention. So that's the whole room. Excited to stay here for the next 3 days. Good morning! It's the first day of orientation for the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship. I've been up for a little bit over an hour just finishing up some last minute homework for our orientation. I have to prep to interview some people, so I had to read some articles about them and their work, and I'm excited to learn a lot more about science writing today. It's about a 15-minute walk from the hotel, and I'm really excited to get some coffee because I am still on West Coast or even just Midwest time, so it's a little bit early, but it's gonna be a good day, and I'll try and check in with you throughout the day to show what I've been up to. It is now after the first full day of orientation for the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship. I came back to the room real quick after happy hour just so I could freshen up. I'm going to a Story Collider event with a few people from the fellowship. It's like a science storytelling kind of event where scientists tell stories kind of like mini TED Talks, so I'm really excited to check that out. Orientation has been really interesting so far. We've had lots of panels from public information officers, from science journalists, from different resources that AAAS offers, so I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm even more excited to get started on Monday and start writing stories and figuring out what kind of stories I'm going to write. But it's been a really good day so far. It's been really fun meeting everyone, and everyone is doing such different research, and we're all at such different organizations, so it'll be really interesting to see everything that people write this summer, and it'll be a wonderful cohort to try and go into science communication with in the future. They're going to be a really great network of people to have. So yeah, it's been a really great day. I'm a little bit tired. Food has been good. I love vegetarian and gluten-free options for lunch. I don't have a lot of dietary restrictions, but if that is something that you are worried about, you don't really have to worry about it because the food was good and there was enough variety for if you have any of those dietary restrictions. They provided us with a folder full of resources and the agenda for the day, but resources that we're going to need and use as science journalists, which is really helpful. They also gave us a notebook and a pen and a fidget spinner. I don't know, I've never had a fidget spinner before, so I am excited to play around with that. So I just got back to my hotel room after the Story Collider event. There were about 5 of us from the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship. It's really fun. We got some beers. All of the speakers were phenomenal. Some really, really great stories, both emotional and just really inspiring about science and people's experiences with science. So I definitely didn't feel like I had any cool stories that were cool enough to share for this kind of platform, but maybe I will think about that in the future to eventually do a Story Collider event in the future. But it was really cool to see Miriam, who helps run that I've been following on Twitter for a while, cool to see her in person and actually doing really cool things. It was unfortunately raining by the time that we got out of the event, so I was not able to go walk to any of the National Mall or any of the monuments, any touristy things nearby. Still a little bit late and I still have some work to do. I have to come up with a way to interview a different fellow for our Friday orientation day, so I'm gonna work a little bit on that before I go to bed. But the event was really fun. I'm excited for another day of orientation tomorrow with a lot more science writing practice. We will see what we write about. We had to read a story on preemies as well, and I know some other people are reading that story tonight just to prepare for tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we get to also have a little bit more time after happy hour and everything with some good weather so that I can invite some of the other fellows over to my balcony, because not everyone in this hotel has balconies and not everyone is staying in this hotel, so hopefully we can have some drinks on the balcony if it's nice and sunny outside, just to do some more chatting and networking before we all head off to our sites for the summer. So that was my whole first day of orientation for the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship. So I finally made it back to my room after the second day of orientation. It's around 8:30 p.m. Most of today was training on how to be a science writer, kind of science writing 101. It was definitely a crash course, a condensed version of an entire semester's worth probably of how to do science writing all in one day. So it was definitely a lot of content. The instructor was the online news editor for science. His name is David Grimm, and he was wonderful. He had a lot of really great tips on how to write leads, how to pitch stories, how to find stories. We asked a lot of questions, and I really appreciated all of the questions that my fellows had, because they had a lot of the same questions that I was thinking, and I'm glad that they got answered. We talked a lot about what kinds of pitches we can do and how to start finding stories for different organizations and just different tips and tricks on that. I'm a little worried that I also have to come up with a whole bunch of story ideas by Monday, and it is a Thursday night right now, so that will be an interesting challenge. Besides the science writing crash course that we had all day, we also had a really awesome pep talk from the CEO of AAAS, Rush Holt, and he really inspired us to build bricks for the edifice of evidence, so really trying to work to write stories that kind of tear down this misconception of evidence and opinion being the same thing in this era of fake news. So I thought it was a really inspirational talk to start off the morning. At the end of training, we also had a panel of alumni, so former AAAS fellows from a whole bunch of different years, like going back to 1998, I think, which was really cool to see where everybody ended up. We had a fellow from last year who was at Nat Geo, and she had a lot of great information to share. There was a fellow that was at the Richmond local newspaper during her fellowship and is now at a university. We had someone that had been a freelancer after finishing the fellowship, and they all had very interesting comments about what it was like during the fellowship and what it was like after the fellowship and how the fellowship prepared them for careers in science journalism. It was really great to hear all of their different paths after the fellowship and whether they had completed their PhDs or not, and what kind of training they had in addition to their PhDs to prepare them for their career. I think the alumni panel was one of the scariest portions of the orientation so far also. It was very informative, but also a little bit scary and intimidating because some of the fellows really just expressed that this was the hardest summer and the hardest they've ever worked in their whole lives. Like, even before the fellowship and after the fellowship, including being in graduate school. So that was a little bit worrisome, but it also seemed like it kind of varied by site, what kind of work culture, work-life balance the different fellows had at their different sites. So I'm really looking forward to the site that I'm going to. I feel like I've heard really good things about the work-life balance at Discover Magazine. So overall, day 2 orientation has been a little bit more draining. It was definitely a little bit more challenging to wake up this morning, definitely snoozed a little bit. Overall, day 2 of orientation has been great. I really appreciate all of the tips that we got on writing stories and ethics and just all of the crash course content, as well as really hearing stories from previous fellows, because I feel like we've heard stories from people in the industry, but not necessarily people who are in the same exact boat as us, who are scientists and doing this kind of fellowship. So it was really great to hear. I also think I did a lot better at networking during the happy hour this evening, so I'm proud of myself for that. We'll see how it goes in the future. I handed out more business cards, so I definitely recommend to bring business cards during orientation if you have the chance, and hopefully I'll bring some for the wrap-up at the end of the summer as well, because it seems like science writing is all about who you know, not necessarily what you know, but also to some degree, and a large degree, how well you can write. I think a couple other fellows are going to come over to my hotel room because I have a balcony, and we're going to try and do drinks because it is not currently raining and not supposed to rain for the rest of the evening. So I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for following along on my journey during orientation thus far. Tomorrow is going to have a tour of a news site. I am going to PBS NewsHour, and we are going to interview a different fellow in a different fellowship program of AAAS, who is a mid-career researcher. That is going to be very interesting, I am sure. All of these researchers study enhancements to the human body, usually through machines, kind of cyborg kinds of things, so definitely think it'll be some interesting conversation, and we get to experience other fellows interviewing as well, so I think it'll be a great learning experience to see how other people interview and really reflect on the whole interviewing process. After doing those interviews, I will have to run to the airport pretty quickly after we wrap up the whole orientation, because my flight leaves very quickly after the orientation ends. It's about 2 hours, and it takes probably half an hour to get to the airport, so hopefully that's not too crazy and hectic. I'm sorry I could not show you more of DC on this little trip. I am planning on seeing more of DC at the end of my fellowship and hopefully having a day to explore DC a little bit more. I have been to DC before, but would love to see all of the monuments and different museums, especially the Newseum, which is a news-themed museum, with fresh eyes, with adult eyes, because I've only been to DC as a kid since high school and before. So that's orientation so far. On the third day of orientation, we each got to go on a tour of a different news organization. I went to PBS NewsHour. We got to meet a lot of people in different departments, and we got a really great tour of the entire studio. During a little bit of free time on this third day of orientation, I checked out an art gallery that AAAS had at their headquarters. It was a whole bunch of really cool math-inspired art. Thanks so much for watching this video. Keep on sciencing, and I will see you real soon.